All right, I've started the recording.
Okay, let's get started. Hi, welcome to NAMIC's Corporate Trauma Talk. I'm Danielle Green, Treasurer of the Southern California Chapter and Finance Manager at Viacom CBS. I am honored today to be your host, and I will be introducing today's guest speaker, Dr. Debra Warner. But first, let's start with a few house rules before we introduce Dr. Warner. Renee Nuthall, who's our event chair, will give you a few pointers on how to navigate our talk today. Tossing it over to you, Renee.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. We're really excited to have you. We've all been on enough Zooms right now, so you know that you need to mute yourself so that we don't hear any background noise during the presentation. I believe that a lot of you are muted all the way when you come in, so that probably won't be that big of a problem. Also, we may go about 15 minutes over today because we don't want to stop the conversation as it goes, so we hope that you can stick around with us until the end of it. Also, today's presentation is going to be an interactive experience, and Dr. Debra is so engaging, and she has scenarios that she's going to give you, and she's going to ask you for reactions, and we want you to feel free to put those in the chat for us. But know that at the end of her presentation, we're going to have a question and answer period. So all of the questions that you have, if you want to save them until then, great. If you want to put them in the chat, we can get those as well. But if you want to save those until the end of the presentation where she can answer them directly, that would be wonderful. Also, we want you to make sure that you're following us on social media. We are namicsocal.org. And for more on why you want to follow us and who we are and why you should join us, I'm going to toss it over to Cliff.
Hello and good morning, everyone. I'm excited to be here. This is a talk that I've been waiting for. My name is Cliff D. Cottrell, and thank you, Rini. I am the membership chair for SoCal NAMIC, and I'm also director of national local markets and business development for the Associated Press and AP Productions. I'm fortunate. I've been a NAMIC member for over 25 years. I've served on both the New York and the Los Angeles chapter boards. And I'm proud of that. NAMIC is a special organization. And for those of you that don't know, NAMIC is the National Association for Multi-Ethnicity and Communications, has been around for over 40 years. Our mission is simple. It's to educate, advocate, and empower for multi-ethnic diversity in the media and entertainment industries. And part of our success really comes from our ability to provide resources to allow companies to really dive in and activate their diversity and inclusion programs within their organizations and allow members to really cultivate and hone their individual careers. So let me tell you a little bit about NAMIC membership. If you join and become a member, it helps to bring events like this one to your computer or to your city. We invite you to join one of our 6 committees and help volunteer. They're the folks that help design and produce events like this one. And the organization helps you to connect with hundreds of professionals that are like-minded, hiring managers. One of the other programs that we have is our very exclusive mentorship program. We have a leadership development program. Many of the executives that you know through NAMIC were a part of that. We have discounted pricing for events, member jobs only or member only job bank, community of like-minded pros, networking and expert directory of over 4,000 industry pros, complimentary online learning, voting privileges, and really a great organization to be a part of. I'm very proud of the work that we do. So please become a member today. Don't wait. You can go to www.namic.com or namicsocal.org to become a member, and we hope that you will do that. So thanks for joining us. Enjoy this event. I want to thank Dr. Warner, Danielle Green, Renee Nuthall, Sandy Nunez, David Simons for helping pull this all together. And with that, I would like to throw it over to my friend, my colleague, and our treasurer and board member, Danielle Green.
Thank you, Cliff, and thank you, Renee. Now on with today's event. I'm delighted to welcome the dynamic Dr. Debra Warner, a leading forensic psychologist, popular speaker, trauma expert, training professional, and author. Dr. Warner has devoted her professional efforts to help men and their loved ones confront and conquer their long-term effects of trauma on the male psyche. She frequently addresses issues related to the hashtag #MenToo movement and challenges masculinity stereotypes and dismantles stigmas related to male trauma. Currently, Dr. Warner focuses on diversity and inclusion issues. In her spare time, she creates trainings related to mental health and trauma in corporate work environments. It should be noted that Dr. Warner, in all her professional endeavors, is dedicated to helping young people and corporate professionals. She's here with us today to help us navigate the terrain of corporate environments that can cultivate different types of bias that bring on covert and overt macro and microaggressions. These forms of aggressions can lead to symptoms of trauma that can result in poor work performance and many other workplace discomforts such as discrimination based on race, gender, or LGBTQ identity. What Dr. Warner will teach us today is very important, as this could be happening to you, or you've experienced some similar situation and didn't know how to address it. Please welcome the esteemed and lovely Dr. Warner with your virtual hand claps and thumbs up.
Hi, thank you. And that's one thing I want to say. We're going to be monitoring the chat, but also you can, if I can see it, which I hope I will, but Daniel will be monitoring. You can put your thumbs up and hand up if in case you want to say something. It's at the bottom in the reactions. And so I am very glad to be here today and thankful and grateful to be doing this presentation of something that's near and dear to my heart and in organizations. And the first thing I want to do is introduce the topic of what we're going to be talking about in the different topic categories. We're going to do an icebreaker so that you can understand where we're going and understand how this is going to work. It's going to be very interactive. We are going to talk about trauma, symptoms of trauma, systemic trauma, microaggressions, macroaggressions, cultural sensitivity, and how to create change, really, and assistance that you can get if these things are happening in your organization. So the first thing I want to do is I want to do an icebreaker, and I am going to reach out to the audience. So Cliff, will you read this out loud for me?
Okay. Todd just spent the last 48 hours working on a proposal. The issue he's been working on is innovative and will save many jobs. He even slept at the office. This morning, he's supposed to present his proposal to the administration and his team members. After his proposal, everyone was silent. Then everyone said how well thought out, it was, and how they did not wait to implement it. The head of the organization said, well, your ideas are fantastic, but his immediate supervisor interrupted and said, before we do anything, let's get an outside consultant to make sure everything is sound. Todd was shocked. Just last week, Mike proposed a new idea and there was no consultant. When Todd asked about why they needed a consultant, his supervisor said, did you really work on this all by yourself? Someone had to have helped you. If not, let's get the help on the back end to be safe.
So what are the reactions to this? What are you thinking? What just happened here? Someone said Todd is undermined. Yes. So patronizing, no trust. What else?
Disrespect.
Disrespect, right? And some of this might bring up old issues of working in organizations or maybe a current organization you're having now. No empowerment. Yes. No equal treatment. All of these things, right? These things cause a lot of anxiety in a person. And how would this interaction affect someone? There's something called worldview, and that's how you view the world and how you interact in the world and how you think others view you, right? But everybody's is different because not everybody thinks or has the same set of circumstances thrown at them in the same way, right? But those emotions come from that, those life experiences. And there's something called history effects, right? If you've been in an organization and you've had this happen to you over and over and over again, that history is going to come out. So if I was Todd, I wouldn't want to say anything in this situation. I would just keep everything to myself, right? And it's being reinforced for him to step back, you know, and it could cause him a lot of emotions and anxiety that's going on. It could cause him a lot of, ooh, that happened to me before, and him remembering that. And what could that be called? Any ideas?
Trauma.
Trauma. Great. We're talking about that today. All right. So what is trauma? Trauma, if you look at the definition, it's by the American Psychological Association. It's post-traumatic stress disorder, but not everybody who has trauma has post-traumatic stress disorder. You can have a lot of experiences that cause you traumatic events, but you don't have the full-blown disorder. So I just want to make sure people know that. But just a direct exposure to something that has caused you anxiety, has caused you distress, you've witnessed it, you've heard of a friend die, you've had a national disaster. We're in a pandemic. This is going to cause trauma from years on out for your kids, for you, for even your dog. Like, I mean, it's going to cause some issues, right? But there's also abuse. This could kind of be seen as abusive in a workplace, right? There's deaths. There's dangerous situations. There's just not noticing how much effort someone has paid into it and then being condescending, right? He stayed up all night doing this, and then you're going to say it's not good enough, or we don't trust your efforts. Wow. I mean, to me, that's like really overwhelming, right? So some symptoms that go into trauma, you heard me talking about other memories, nightmares, flashbacks, emotional distress after the exposure to traumatic reminders, physical reactivity. You've seen people and they just kind of shudder, right? It kind of gets shell-shocked. Well, imagine going into that boardroom every week and remembering that experience. Right? That person's not being different. That person is reacting to something that really affected them. Now, you might think, hey, that shouldn't affect you that much. You're not them. Remember, we said something about worldview? That worldview is causing a lot of this that's going on, but that doesn't discount the emotions that the other person has evoked because of their behavior, right? Okay, and then you avoid the trauma or related stimuli, right? You might have thoughts and feelings that go on to it, external and internal reminders, negative thoughts or feelings that began or worsened after, in the following ways, or just after the trauma, an inability to recall key features of the trauma. There's one thing you have to understand, especially people in organizations. When someone comes and they report trauma to you, and then the next day they might remember something different, or the facts might change a little bit, it's because when you're traumatized, your brain does not work the same way. It's not linear as it is when you're just remembering how you're going to walk through the gates of Disneyland. Okay, that's not as stressful, it's not as traumatic, right? Unless something's happened to you there, right? And so you might think, oh, they're lying to you. They're not lying to you. They're just trying to piece together what happened because emotionally that caused a distress to them. So the best thing is let them figure it out and work that through with them, but don't discount or say that you don't believe them, because then they're just going to shut down and you're not going to understand what's going on. And if that's happening in your organization, you kind of want to know all the pieces of it so you can stop it, right? We're moving into an anti-racist environment. Well, it's not just about race, it's about feelings and about people in protected classes, okay? So overly negative thoughts and assumptions, exaggerated blame. One thing that people do when they're traumatized, they take it on to themselves. They don't realize it could be a situational thing or something external. They take it all in, that they've done something wrong to cause the boss not to trust them. And it may just be, that may be about the boss and his perceptions, not about you, right? So some of the other symptoms you have are negative affect. You've seen people in the workplace who never smile and you wonder what's going on, right? Or when you get to work, your smile goes away. Those experiences, yeah, my joy is gone, okay? Decreased interest in activities, feeling isolated, feeling like you have no one to talk to, You know, difficulty experiencing positive affect, inability, irritability or aggression. The one thing I want to tell you, men will become more irritable where women might shut down. And people don't realize that, because the one emotion men are allowed to have whenever they feel anything is aggression or anger. And so you might think, oh, he's just being assertive, but it may be an irritability because he's having a traumatic experience. Okay. Women, they'll usually isolate or they'll become emotional, but the emotion, it comes out very differently. So you can't classify it all in one way. Risky, destructive behavior, hypervigilance, heightened startle reaction, coming up behind someone and then they immediately look at you in the boardroom and you're going, why are you doing that? Because there's something going on internally the environment is evoking that. Difficulty sleeping. You know, we all say, oh, I just didn't have a good night's sleep. And then someone perpetually coming in late because they're not sleeping. There's something that's causing that in the environment. So here's another example, okay, to really horn this in. So I'll ask for a volunteer. Who wants to read this out loud? Or I'll call on somebody.
I'll go ahead and read it, Dr.
Okay, perfect.
Sam and Jack work for the same management team. Sam is very vocal about his opinions that seem to be heard well by leadership. Jack never states his opinion. He shares with Sam that the recent project may need some revision, but is afraid to say anything because he feels his supervisor does not like him. His supervisor is always making comments like, how did you come up with that? With Sam's encouragement at the team meeting, Jack speaks up just as Sam had done in the past. His supervisor is silent, and after the meeting, he asks to meet in his office. The supervisor asks Jack why he felt he could express his ideas without running them by him first. Jack responds, well, you always listen to Sam's ideas, so I thought I would share mine. The supervisor asks him to leave, and from that point on, he sends Jack weekly emails asking him if he has anything to say in the team meeting in case he wanted to voice an opinion. Jack asked Sam if he had gotten these emails, and Sam said he has never received emails like that, so he must be misunderstanding the intention. This has been going on for weeks, and each day, Jack feels more isolated, depressed, and anxious. He has started not sleeping and wants to avoid his work email altogether. He makes doctor's appointments whenever he can in order to miss the team meetings.
Wow, now what are the first thoughts on that?
Been there, done that.
Been there, done that? Yeah. What else?
He's shutting down.
Yeah.
He's shutting down.
He's shutting down. He's not performing anymore. He's not engaging anymore. He's checked out.
Yeah, and you know, some people are writing anger, been there. You know, they're saying it's impacted his self-confidence, totally shutting down, can relate, right? Why even bother, right? But I want you to look at the behaviors that are also going in there. He doesn't want to read his emails. Can you imagine going in and seeing a computer and that's triggering and invoking a response in you?
Yeah.
That's traumatic. And a lot of people do not see it that way, right? I mean, and some people say this hurts the team and ultimately the company, his performance. Yes, like all of those things that goes into this, right? And it will not click for me. There we go. So how is this traumatic? He had depression, anxiety, avoidance, isolation, the same symptoms as PTSD. The difference is he may not meet the full-blown disorder, but he still has all of that going on, right? This is way too common in what's going on, right? In corporate America today, right? And one thing I want you to understand, because I did this, I practiced with my little boy, he's 10, right? Yesterday. And he immediately said to me, well, is he Black? And I said, why would you say that? And he's like, well, it just seems like there's some discrimination going on. Now he's being raised in my household, right? So, but he's a little change agent. And I said, what kind of discrimination would be happening? He goes, well, why would he do that for him and not for him? That doesn't make sense. He's got some prejudices. And I said, oh my goodness, right? I was like, I was seeing it through someone's eyes who completely doesn't even go in the corporate world, right? And so I said, well, let me look at what's the difference between prejudice, racism, and oppression, because they all go together, right? And most people don't get that. You have to have the thought to be prejudiced, and that comes from your worldview and how you're interacting in the world, right? With everything on TV and what's going on today, everybody has prejudices. We can all at least admit that, right? But the thing to be racist, you have to have the institutional power. It's a behavior, right? Whether it's in a corporation, you don't give them a promotion, or you're sending emails that have an underlying current that someone can't put their finger on, right? And in doing that, you're creating something oppressive, because guess what? Other people are watching you. And so when that person comes up for promotion, they're going to say, well, yeah, remember he never spoke up again in that meeting. Ooh, he may not be able to stand up for himself. See how you created an environment that kept someone down, and he can't even get the promotion to add more to his life or his family? Imagine that happening all the time. That's traumatic. And then he goes to another organization, and he doesn't even have to be Black. He doesn't even have to be Hispanic. They could be a woman. They could be handicapped. They could be in a protected class that's causing this. And it's all because someone didn't realize that they had these preconceived thoughts that came into the workplace. And these are called microaggressions, okay? Microaggressions, and I have to move my people here so I can read it all. Behavior or verbal interactions that seem harmless, but convey hostility and prejudice toward a protected class of people or minority group, okay? And when you have those little micro interactions, imagine how that's festering in an organization, because it's not just coming from within, it's coming from outside, going in, making something bigger, right? And you imagine you already have these microaggressions in your life going on, and you can all think of them in the world right now. And then you come in the workplace, and then you still have some of that flavor. That's where the systemic stuff comes in and creates the corporate trauma. And so here's some examples, okay? And I've heard all of these and heard them from other people. Did Don help you with that? You did this? Not bad for a girl. Men just would not understand. It's a man's world after all. How hard was that for you? I knew you had it in you. With the right support, you can do anything. Certain cultures dress so colorful. You went to school there? Wasn't that hard for you? You were not what I expected. Don't you want to retire soon? You're just not a good fit. Make sure you get it looked over for accuracy. Now, hearing those, what comes up? What do people see? What do people hear?
Microaggressions.
Microaggressions, right? Imagine hearing that all the time. I have people saying not good enough, right? You know, and with the right support, you can do anything. Someone put that in there. But imagine if you're a person who's had a background where you've had the right support, you've had the right colleges, you've had everything that could get you ready, right? And someone says, and you've written a great presentation, well, with the right support, we can make this better. Like you're not good enough. It insinuates you're not good enough. Now, if you reworded that as, oh my God, this is so great, let's build a team around you to support you. Do you see the difference in how you say that versus saying, well, with the right support, you can do anything, meaning you can't do it without the support. You want to empower with your words, not tear down. And then that is the root of macroaggressions, because these one-on-ones add up. And people are watching you if you're a boss. People are watching you if you're interacting with a coworker, and then they're getting opinions on that coworker by how you interact, right? People live by example. People create cognitive scripts on how to do things. Remember when you were a little kid, you all had a script on what you do to get ready for school. So you get up, you brush your teeth, you might comb your hair, you have breakfast, you go and you stand in line for the teacher to get you, then you go in there and you pull out your backpack, or you may hang your backpack, whatever it is, you've made a script of how to behave, right? And that's the start of how you behave in a work environment, because you have to be structured in school. Now imagine your script for a work environment has all these microaggressions or has all of these things that you send emails when you don't trust somebody, right? Or you don't realize that your coworker that might have come off harsh, or realizing what's going on with you, right? Because your scripts are different than someone else's. It's not the fact that you have the scripts, it is noticing that what you're saying could be invoking something in someone else. And over time, that could create a traumatic effect. Now, one thing you can do to combat this is be culturally sensitive. And this definition is so easy, you know, and most people just don't realize it's this easy. A person who's culturally sensitive can be placed in any situation and try to understand and learn, not change it. You're not there to change it. You're not there to go and make everybody do everything you do. You're there to understand why that culture is existing. You're there to understand why this person in the workplace might do things the way they do them, or why they dress the way they dress. It's okay that they do, as long as you're trying to put in an understanding and understand how they behave. You don't want to change it. You want to be open to the differences. And so how can you change as an organization? Recognize your own prejudices. I cannot stress that enough. Think about how your words and actions, and if they are connected. Are you doing things that go against what you're saying, or are you really walking the walk and talking the talk? Do activities that are not work related. So I always give this example, going to someone's home. I'm not saying you have to hang out in all your coworkers' houses, but I'm giving the example of, imagine work is a very structured environment. You're only seeing a piece of that person, like a glimpse, 10% of their life. Imagine if you went to their home. You're going to see who they interact with. You're going to see the foods they eat. You know, I mean, just to bring it home, imagine if the CEO of Amazon went to one of his workers' houses and had dinner who he pays $15 an hour. Would that be an eye-opener? Now, I'm not saying if he'd believe it or take it in. I'm saying think about what a difference that would be in his life. And how that, if he didn't interfere, would be culturally sensitive. Be open to learning differences. Don't assume you know everything about somebody. And just because you may have been through it doesn't mean they're taking it in the same way. Create a task force, but not just create a task force of people who are like the group that you want to create it for. You want to create people who are different than people in the protected class, because everybody is going to be taking out what the task force creates. You want to be able to have people to talk to different people that they align with. Everybody aligns with different people, and you want that to be able to go out through the organization. So you want different types of opinions, even people who oppose it on the task force. Okay, not all the same, all different. You can create an ombudsman. One of the best experiences I had was when I was at Columbia University, because they had an ombudsman. The ombudsman was someone who was placed at the university. The funding did not come from the university, and their job was to hear people's opinions, to hear people's frustrations, and to help them navigate the system and to help them get the support they needed. And so since they weren't as connected, but they were allowed to be there to do their work because they had grant funding, they saw a lot of change within their organizations and how people interacted with each other, because they were able to go to this ombudsman and get all the knowledge they needed to move forward in the appropriate way within the organization, and didn't even know that some of the resources exist. And the ombudsman could come in and interact and be an emissary for a lot of things and provide an opinion that was completely separate. And so this was very helpful to create an organization that was really trying not to be traumatic to the person, but be anti-racist. So to summarize everything that I presented, we talked about trauma, we talked about symptoms of trauma, systematic trauma, microaggressions, macroaggressions, cultural sensitivity, and how to create an environment that doesn't do this, and some assistance that you can have. This is a part one, because I go in way more depth in all of these categories. And I actually talk about, or review all this. We talk about cultural sensitivity in way more depth with many more examples. We go into cognitive scripting and really do that. We introduce automatic thoughts, just the first thought that comes in your mind when you see somebody. How do you stop that so that you are not creating a prejudiced environment? You know, different ways to create change. I introduce making up a story about someone and how you do that naturally and how to stop that. Okay, looking at introducing cultural judgments and, you know, providing other suggestions. So one of the things we also wanted to do, since I did this, and I'm trying to move my chat back over, is also give you a space to ask. Here's the resources, sorry. First thing, here's all the resources that I have, but you can also get my resources on Dr. Debra's Things and More, all the books and resources you saw through this. And so we want to give you a space for a question and answer session with me. I think about 20-25 minutes.
Yes. Mhm.
Okay.
So we do have a question, Dr. Warner, that just recently popped
Yes.
up, and it's asking, what is systematic trauma?
So basically, it's the whole system creating that for a person, right? So we talk, if you look at what I talked about microaggressions, and you have these one-on-one interactions, right? And then that person goes into the workplace with their belief system and they continue that behavior, right? So then the system, imagine if they're in charge and people are watching them. The system has created this to continue and fester because people are afraid to say anything. People are afraid to go against the culture that's already ingrained. And so this system is causing all of this anxiety within it to continue to traumatize the person, or to also continue to create these macroaggressions that become micro, right? So it's not just one person. You're interacting with one person, they're interacting with one person, and they're interacting with someone else. And all these people are interacting in a circle with everyone else. And that culture has created the systematic trauma that keeps occurring. Maybe it is cultural to continue to give people emails like that and make them feel inferior. That doesn't mean it's okay. Just because your organizational culture is like that does not mean it's okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
You were talking about your cognitive script and what's in there.
Mm-hmm.
How do you begin to undo that?
So there are so many different ways. And then one of the books on my Amazon page actually lays this out for you too. But you have to realize that your script might be flawed, right? And the fact that you're asking this question, you might have something in mind. And so you have to realize that. And when you do, you change it. So there's something called automatic thoughts goes together with that. So if I wake up in the morning, I go, I'm going to have a bad day. That's my automatic thought, right? Well, if I change that to, I'm going to have the best day I can. Do you see the difference in that? Then when your script comes, oh man, okay, you know what? My kids are going to school. They're going to get in trouble today. You change it to, they're going to have the best day they can. And that rubs off on them because you're giving them the belief that they can have a better day, right? So whatever that script is that you created, change it. Just that one thought can have a chain reaction.
That's a good response, Dr. Warner. We have another question from one of our attendees. They're asking, can you leave a job, I guess, when you're under this type of stress, or if you're under some sort of duress that's creating issues with work performance? Can you actually strategically and tactically leave a job? I guess your question is, can you leave a job like this due to duress?
Yes. I wouldn't just quit. I would keep team around me, because the minute you quit, that changes your category a lot. You're in a protected class if you feel this way, you know, in different circumstances, right? So you want to consult, you want to go to your EAP, you want to go to your medical doctor. That stress is causing you anxiety. There may be, you know, you can go on medical leave. When you're on medical leave, you can get yourself together. The organization really can't contact you. They have to let you deal with that, right? And then you might want to come back. But there are so many things that can protect you. It's good to get a lot of people around you in a team that helps you go through this. The best thing you can do is start talking to people you trust. In part 2, I actually talk about how to build your team. And I talk about how to build people that are supportive of you within the corporate environment.
I have a question. I think for many of us who've been in the business for quite a long time, you know, the kind of comments you would get would be, hey, you know, you need to have a tougher skin. You know, you need to kind of, you know, strengthen yourself up a little bit. Don't take everything so personally. how do we communicate to management and to our coworkers that there's a difference between being tough enough to be in business versus having actual trauma? How do we distinguish those things?
Well, you know, there's another piece of this. Our words mean a lot. You always tell men, suck it up, be a man, right? Because you have to be all these things to be manly in our society. The top athlete, the entrepreneur, the top executive. We have to stop saying those things, because in women here, that they're not good enough to be there anyways, right? But right now in our climate, our organizations are traumatized, right? So one of the things we have to realize is, because of all of the stuff that's going on in our world, it's a great time to look at how we need to change our language so that we do not continue this cycle of systemic and racist comments or violence within the organization, right? I've gotten so many calls recently about organizations that have people having major anxiety and depression within them, and can I come and consult on how to stop that? And the first thing I say is, I ask people, I survey, what is the main thing that's giving you anxiety? And they say that my boss doesn't trust me. My boss sends me these messages. And I said, here's where you need to start. And I say, how is a better way for them to say that to you? And when they survey back, they say, you know, give me a time frame to do it. You know, give me, that shows me you're going to trust me to do it. And then if I don't, then you can come back and talk to me. Like, but that has to come from inside by doing action research and figuring out what are the messages that are being sent that continuously do that on a micro level.
Dr. Warner, we have another great question. They're asking, you spoke about the chain reaction on an individual level. How long does it take before it becomes the new normal within you? And then there's a second part of the question, is there science behind that to break old patterns, and does it vary?
Yeah, I mean, actually there's a lot of science. There's a lot of literature on organizational leadership that's out there. You can look at some stuff, I think, by Winnicott. Sue and Sue do a whole thing on microaggressions and diversity, which is really fascinating. And you know what, how long does it take? It depends on the person. It can take that moment to tear someone down. Like the first vignette, we had Todd. Immediately people are like, oh my God, I wouldn't say anything at all, right? It would tear me down. Where some people, it takes time. It depends, right? But immediately it's going to cause you to think about, ooh, you know, am I good enough? Should I be here? You know, or should I keep talking, right? So those messages, just the one time, can affect somebody. Sometimes I tell managers, or I tell people who are having trouble with coworkers, before it comes out of your mouth, would you want to hear that? Is that something that you'd want to hear that would sit in your soul or would empower you? And if it is something that would empower you, then I'd say it. If not, maybe you should wait. The other thing I do to give people, have people create teams within their workplace, teams of people who are diverse in you that you can count on to give you feedback. I have people that I consult with that are mentors to me, and I will bring them a problem and say, hey, you know, what do you think? What is the best way for me to go about this? Because I don't want to come off this way, right? That's a great way for you to not do that and be supported, so that the one time is not you doing that to a person.
Dr. Warner, that actually brings me to something I wanted to touch on. You mentioned part 2, where you talk about, you know, kind of finding your support group. I've always felt that that's a really important thing, particularly if you are going through this kind of trauma. I'm sure it feels very isolated, you know, you feel very isolated. So we actually are running a little ahead of schedule. So I'm hoping, do you mind giving us a little taste of that? Because I don't want folks to walk away saying, well, how do we do this, you know, when I'm in the middle of it?
Okay, again, you blanked out like right when you were asking the question. So
can you just give us a taste of, you know, maybe some tips on how to build that support system when you are undergoing this type of trauma? You mentioned that's part 2 that you normally elaborate. We have, you know, we're running ahead of schedule actually. So I'm thinking maybe we should dive into that just a little bit, as much as you can.
Sure. I mean, you know, the first thing I would do is figure out with me, what is it that's going on with me? If this is emotionally based, I would be going and seeking the type of support that I need. Now, your EAP program, you can usually get sessions, right? And that could be your first start to getting the emotional support that you need. You might need more than that. You might need to go talk to a medical doctor if the depression has become that bad for you, right? But also, if it is to where you have evidence that these things are happening, you might want to go speak to an attorney. And you might want to check in with your HR. But the one thing about your human resources department that people don't get is they're there to protect the company. They're not as much there to protect you.
Right.
So if you really want protection, you can go to your local EEOC department in your state and ask them, you know, is this discriminatory? But I will tell you, the first, if you feel you're in a protected class and you feel you're being discriminated against, the minute you say that in writing, that company is supposed to stop, pause, and they're supposed to listen to you. And they're supposed to stop any kind of adverse actions against you. If that doesn't stop, then that means that there's more going on there, and you have to look at that. So the first thing I would do is get myself together. The second thing I would do is I would get the right treatment. By doing that, I would go and find an attorney. I would check in with my EAP to see how many sessions I had, and then I would seek the counsel of an attorney to make sure that I was doing everything correct, and I would look at my local EEOC.
Dr. Warner, there's two examples in the chat where people were saying, like, one person said they quit their job because of duress and belittling and mean girls, and HR told me there was nothing they could do and it got worse. They took medical leave for a year and a half. They had nowhere to go. An attorney told them it was a classic case of mean girls. An utterly awful experience. Like, and there was someone else that mentioned, you know, getting an attorney and them saying, you know, they couldn't do anything. Somebody said they should have filed a police report about something. Like, that just does not sit right.
No, it doesn't sit right. And one of the things is you can file a police report, you can do all of that, but you the organization is supposed to protect you once you say that, right? They're supposed to defuse it. If they do not, then you have grounds to take that further, right? And document. In writing, any conversation, you document and you send it back. I also tell people to get a notebook and with dates, and they put the date of what has happened. Every time a new adverse event happens, it starts your clock because you have a time frame to where you can report it. If they're doing anything assaultive or aggressive to you, like, you know, whatever it is that's mean girl behavior you find assaultive, you should call the police, right? You should do that, because if you don't do that, then you're not taking care of yourself, and then that behavior is not checked. It's not shown that this is not something that you want to do. Oh, I was just going to tell you what the EEOC is. It is the Employment Opportunity Commission, and what they're there to do is to protect you. You have to look in your state. You have to start with your state and go to the national level with that. So your state will file if they believe your case is valid, but that documentation is the thing you need. And then it might go to a national level, but usually it'll stop at the state level.
Dr. Warner, so you mentioned, if I could just follow up on the question I asked about how do you sort of support yourself better. So you mentioned, you know, check yourself, see what state your own mind is and how you can, but then what's next after that?
You should go to a medical doctor. You want to validate all the emotions that's going on. You want to seek the help of an attorney, right? You want to also see if any sessions can be paid for through your human resources, EOP department, right? And then after that, you can weigh, once you have all the advice from all these people, what's best for you. But when you're on medical leave, they can't talk to you. So the whole time that you're investigating this, you get the letter from your doctor saying that it's too stressful for you to come to work. You can be working on all of these things and decide what you want to do. Sometimes just getting a break and coming back is helpful, right? But still, document. If the organization reaches out to you, you need to document that. And you need to be communicating with the team that you have built around you to keep you safe.
Well, you had made reference earlier, though, to, you know, I'm kind of trying to get to how you build kind of your advisory.
Okay, you want to know how to build your advisory team. So there's two different advisory teams you can build, right? Whenever I am working in a setting that's corporate or not, I have people around me that I consider good consultants for different things, right? So sometimes I've even found people on LinkedIn saying, hey, you know, I'm a professional. I want to know what you think of this. Can I run these things by you? But I've created a team of people for certain things. I have one friend that anything multicultural, I'll call them for that particular thing. I have someone else if it's something that's an ADA issue, because they know that there's someone that calls. Someone who wants a male trauma expert calls me, right? But we're that safe place for each other, right? Now, if you're in a situation you want to find an attorney, one of the things you can do is that you can look up attorneys that work in the workplace and go talk to them, shop, find someone you feel comfortable with, find someone you gel with that you want to talk to. If you have a doctor and you don't like the doctor, get another one. You know, you have a provider network that's in your human resources department from your benefits. Keep going. If you have an HMO, do what the HMO says, but keep going till you find someone that fits, right? Build the team from, you can start with existing resources you have and branch out from there and build the people you're comfortable with. Don't take anyone you're not, because this is something very important. The trauma is very real, and you have to be comfortable with the people you've built on your team. I always say, build a team of 3 to 5 people that you trust. They could be people within the organization and they can be people outside of the organization, but that's your team that you're building so that they support you in your efforts.
Excellent, thank you. Danielle, Rini, anything else?
No, I was just looking at, you know, what people were saying about, you know, making sure you document and how that doesn't seem to be enough. And then the whole, you know, what if you get that target on your back? You know, what if you're that person that goes and then all of a sudden, you know, that's why nobody wants to say anything, for fear that no one's going to hire you. It's going to get around. You're difficult. You made problems. That's, you know, when I was coming up and I was much younger, we didn't say a word. You know, got abused in all kinds of ways in different situations, and just, you didn't say anything because that's what you were just taught to do. So what if you're afraid of just, that's going to happen? You're going to say something, but then forget it. You're never going to work again.
But that's where I talked about someone having a worldview and life history effects coming in, right? That's the thing we have to stop. We have to stop in this culture. Someone who speaks up, who may be a whistleblower, and there are whistleblowing laws, right? But someone who speaks up and says that, we can't look at them like, oh, they're a troublemaker or they have a target on their back. Well, let's find a way to get them out of here. Let's put them on a corrective plan, right? Because they're talking too much. That is not the way to go in a corporate environment, because it's creating this traumatic system for people that's perpetuated over and over again.
Hey, Rini, I wanted to mention there are a couple questions that I think are really important too. Like, should you go to the doctor first, or should you go to an attorney first before going to HR? I think I combine those two questions. What's the first, second, third step, doctor?
So the first thing I would do is go see a medical doctor, because you need to be healthy to be in the right space to make the right decisions. Attorneys, that's not their job. Their job is to guide you, right, legally. And if you're not in the right headspace, you may not be able to decipher, because they're going to have a lot of questions and a lot of things coming at you that you may not be able to go get the information to answer the question, right? So the first thing is get a medical doctor. They may put you on medical leave right then, and yay, that means that you can be out of that environment and be working on what you want and go get an attorney, right? And HR, you can talk to HR if you want a document that you tried and they did nothing, right? But say it's a situation where you have a boss that's sending you these emails over and over, and you've told your boss, right, over and over, and you tried, and maybe the boss has threatened you. If you go to HR, then I'm going to do this. Well, you may be reluctant to go, or they play golf with the head of HR every Sunday. Right. You may be reluctant to even go down that path. And so you're like having so much angst and anxiety. I would go see a medical doctor, then I would see what my next course of action is. And that would likely be an attorney, but I would have it documented. I have it documented that I even know that they play golf, that's creating an environment, because there's something called a power differential. And you have to look at the power differential that is in that environment. This is the head of HR that you want to talk to, and the people under him are under the head, and the person you're complaining about is his best friend at work.
Right.
There's a power differential there.
Yeah.
And so why would you say anything?
Yeah, and I just want to make sure people, particularly those of you who are part of HR departments, this isn't about an anti-HR
No.
thing. It is really just making sure you're taking care of self first and
Mhm.
making sure you have all your ducks in a row, right?
Yes, because
Re-
HR departments, good ones, will recognize these power differentials. They will recognize these things. They will recognize this person has these rights out in the world if they want to go and invoke them, right? And they don't want that to happen because that leaves the company vulnerable. So they're there for the company, so they're not vulnerable. If you have a good HR department, which I've seen many of them run really, really well,
Mhm.
right? Then you won't even feel uncomfortable going to HR.
Right.
You want to say something. I never felt uncomfortable going to say anything at Columbia because I knew that it was supportive environment, right? Okay, so it's not that HR is bad, but you have to realize they're there to protect the company. And if you have all these other power differentials and dynamics going on, you may want to rethink the course of action.
Right. Absolutely.
Dr. Warner, and I think it's important that you mentioned that you should go to a medical doctor first, because I have seen, actually, I saw one situation where I knew of an individual who was very depressed, and it was a male. And it turns out it was actually, it was hormonal. Like, you know, he was deficient in a certain hormone. And once that was straightened out, then his outlook really changed. So I think it's important to understand, right? I mean, you're the doctor of my mouth. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think that that's something to point out, right?
It is. But you have to also realize the environment could have invoked the hormonal change, right? So
Exactly, stress, right? Stress will do, and then it turns out that's what it was, right?
Yeah, yeah. What came first, the chicken or the egg? But I always tell
Right.
people when I write a report for court, one of the first recommendations I have is to go see a medical doctor. Always, because it could be something that you don't even realize, but you know the environment isn't bringing it out, right?
Mhm.
And so I always want to double check that. And then that person also will work with a psychologist or a psychiatrist to ensure that you're on the right medication, or do you need therapy? What type of therapy? You know, it could be just as changing your outlook, right? It could be other stressors from your life, but that's what all these people on your team are there to help you navigate through.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, stress is tough.
Dr. Warner, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Someone in the chat asked, they're wondering if the company benefit teams offer their employees list of providers like therapists, doctors, et cetera, who are from diverse backgrounds. My question to you is it smart to go through the company's doctors or their provided lists, or get your own? Because you don't want to compromise, or you don't want to have someone speaking on behalf of the company, right? You want
Well,
your doctor to give the actual assessment of what you're doing or experiencing, correct?
Well, there's two ways that happens. So if the company sees you as some kind of threat, they're going to send you for something called a fitness for duty evaluation. There is no confidentiality. Okay. So that is between the company, because for the psychologist or the doctor, the company is the client, right? So you pick from a list, you have to do it to keep your job. Now, if you're asking because you're having emotional distress and they have an EAP list of people to see, all that person can say is, yeah, I saw them. They can't, because they're going to have to bill to get the free sessions that come from that. Anything that happens after that, they bill you, right? Okay, but they can't say what your diagnosis is. They can't say anything about that because that's private. Okay, so it's okay to get that list to start you off, but that person, if they're a therapist or a doctor and they think that you're in jeopardy, one of the things I do is I say, I'm going to refer you to someone that might better fit you. There's nothing wrong with that, because the doctors usually look out for their clients, and I've referred people out too, you know, because I think that maybe it's a better fit to really differentiate, you know, them from the corporation. Okay, so there's nothing wrong with starting with that list, but you be open to where it can go.
And doctor, how important is it to emphasize sort of the quality of the doctor? You know, meaning, you know, do you want to try to go to a, you know, a reputable, thorough doctor? I would assume, right?
Well, that's a very interesting question. There's many ways to answer that. So if you're going because you just want to figure out what's going on and get therapy, and you don't want to pay a lot of money, you can go to a college counseling center. And a lot of times it's students who are learning, and you're going to get better because they're being supervised. Now, if you're in the middle of litigation and your attorney tells you to go see a certain person, that's because those qualifications are what he needs to go on the stand, right? So that takes it into a whole nother realm, right? And a lot of times they want you to see that person, but you're not going to be seeing them like every week. You're going to be seeing them for the evaluation so that they can provide their opinion, and they'll be talking to the therapist every week, who could be anybody. I would suggest you go to a licensed person or someone who is supervised by a licensed person. That is your best bet. I wouldn't go to a life coach or anyone like that. Not to knock life coaches and everything, but they're not credible to go into court. So that's not going to help you. But anyone who has a license or is being supervised by someone with a license, that can help you. So that's how I would do that. People who usually contact me at this point, because I don't see clients as much anymore, usually it's an attorney or someone looking for someone to be able to testify.
Good. Let's see.
It's important to seek your own therapist and counselor. Trial and error. Yes, I love this question. Trial and error. It is, I always call it shopping. I call it therapist, doctor shopping, attorney shopping, but you know, you shop for other things. Why not? This is a very important step in your life. You're not going to go, you know, and pay $1,200 for a Louis Vuitton purse and the stitching's not coming off on the side, right? You're going to want what fits you. You might want something else. You might want a guest purse. Well, then get the thing that's going to fit you best.
Right.
All right. Well, Dr. Warner, you are a very dynamic talker, speaker, woman. I really appreciate you coming to talk to us about these issues of microaggressions, macroaggressions, how to deal with it, how to deal with workplace harassment. It's been very, very educational and informative. And we thank you so much for taking the time out with your busy schedule to come and talk to us about those issues.
Oh, not a problem. And again, part 2 is even more, you know, encompassing of all these issues. And I usually tailor it to whoever I'm talking to. So this was tailored just for you. But if you want to contact me, here's all my contact information. There's my office, there's my cell. I'm at the Chicago School. I'm a professor there. And you can go to my website, debrawarner.net, and you can see all the services that I provide. But if you want all the resources, go to Amazon and go to Dr. Debra's Things and More. Just click on this link. It'll take you right to the corporate trauma bookstore that I've set up. And you can look at all the other things. I have stuff on just psychology. I have things that keep you, you know, busy through the pandemic. Whatever it is that you want to look at that is, you know, emotionally basic and help you, go to my store, look at it, and also reach out to me. And, you know, because I love to talk to people and help them through all kinds of stuff. So I'm thankful. Thank you, everybody, for the questions and letting me come and visit you today.
Thank you so
This was
much.
awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone, for the questions and being so brave and being with us.
Right. Right. Thank you.
Join up. Bye now.
Bye.